Yesterday, August 25th, was Women's Equality Day because on that day in 1920, women in the United States finally achieved the right to vote. That's right, the United States has only been a democracy for about 94 years. Well, some would argue that it's still not. But anyway, I linked to the Wikipedia page for Women's Equality Day without actually double checking to make sure that it was accurate. Huge mistake. A friend pointed out to me that the very first sentence reads as so. Women's Equality Day is a day proclaimed each year by the United States President to commemorate the granting of the vote to women throughout the country without the requirement of consignment, making the right a privilege greater than that granted to men, who were only given the right to vote under the obligation of the draft. Wow, that's obviously the work of a men's rights activist, tirelessly activating for men's rights on the pages of Wikipedia. Note that there is no citation. That's because it's not grounded in reality in any way. In truth, voting rights have nothing to do with consignment, which of course is the duty of all men to turn over their old suits and ties to small business owners who then sell the items to customers and give a portion of the sale price back to the original donor. And of course, the right to vote also has nothing to do with conscription, which is the requirement of men to register for the military in case of national emergency. Though technically the draft is still in place, no one actually signs up for it anymore. And in fact, no one has been prosecuted for not signing up for it since 1986. The U.S. draft didn't even start until 1861 at the beginning of the Civil War. Of course, men had been voting for about 100 years prior to that, and their ability to vote was not determined by whether or not they served in the military. It was determined by whether or not they were usually an older, white, wealthy, landowning man. Bit by bit, of course, over the years, marginalized groups chipped away at each of those adjectives until everybody had the right to vote. But at no point did military service come into it. Even at the start of the draft, older men and infirm men who couldn't serve in the military were never denied the right to vote. Not only did men vote prior to the draft even existing, but in the 1970s during the Vietnam War, people protested the fact that the draft age was 18 while the voting age was 21. So it wasn't that men were going to war to be able to vote. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Men were going to war without having the ability to vote. And that was seen as vastly unfair because these men couldn't even have the political power to change their fate. Obviously, the protesters won on that, and the voting age is now 18. So there we have it, another brave act of men's rights activism foiled by an evil feminazi. Sorry. But for the record, I 100% disagree with the idea of a draft. I don't think that any man or woman should be forced to go to war for their government. At the same time, I do support those many, many women who have tirelessly campaigned to be able to serve in the military to the same degree as men, to be out there on the front lines. I believe that not allowing women to do so is just plain simple sexism. And while we're at it, let me just say that I 100% agree with consignment. I believe that it is every person's right to be able to get money for their used clothing. Personally, it's too much work for me. I just donate my clothes to the AmVets down the street. But the option should be available to everyone, men and women.